and welcome into Maroon and Bold. I am your host, Austin Chastain, also your sports editor for Central Michigan Life. Alongside me in the Zoom call is Christian Boer, staff reporter at CM Life. Christian, how are things going for you, man?
Going well, man. We're doing all right. We're back in the swing of things at school. You can't really ask for a better situation right now.
Right on, man. Well, glad to hear things are going well for you. Yeah, that pace of getting back to it, getting back to school. That's it's kind of fun and also is kind of stressful. So yeah, just kind of managing all of that. It not easy, but we're getting there. This week's episode, we're going to talk about coaches, because last week we talked about the players, our top 5 players in CMU history. This week we're going to do the coaches, kind of rounding out our little Hall of Fame series, if you will. But before we do that, there is a little bit of news that we want to get to. The Mid-American Conference presidents met this weekend. I guess they met on Saturday and actually both on Sunday to discuss the potential for a football season. Initially, it sounded like that it was a done deal from what we heard from some people, but it wasn't indeed not a done deal. There is a meeting, I guess, early this week to kind of lay everything out and determine whether or not the MAC is going to play football this fall or wait till the spring like it had initially planned. But with the return of the Big Ten and some of the other conferences that had already postponed the season, they're kind of talking about moving away from the spring season and still being able to play in the fall. Christian, I know you're a little bit more on top of this than actually I am. So what are some of your thoughts and what are some of the things that you're hearing about the potential return to action?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of optimism surrounding the chance of a fall football season right now. I think that a lot of people think that this is something that can happen. You've seen it done now for 2 or 3 weeks at the college football level. You've seen teams be able to execute playing, the off chance that somebody does test positive or a bunch of people get on the no play list because of contact tracing. Teams are able to have guys step up. It's something that I think that, the early conferences like the Sun Belt and some of the Division II or FCS schools that have decided to play a season have kind of set the standard, like, okay, this is something we can do. And now, you saw the Big Ten flip the script. And I think that the MAC, the Mountain West, and the Pac-12, the 3 conferences that aren't playing right now, are all kind of kicking themselves because, hey, this is something that can happen. They're proving they can do it. And now I think the MAC especially wants to get back on that bandwagon and try to play some football.
Right, and the MAC was the first, if you guys remember, going back to August, the MAC was the first to cancel this, to, I guess, postpone the season is the correct terminology there, but the MAC was obviously the first FBS conference to postpone the season. The Big Ten and the Mountain West and the Pac-12 all followed suit in following days. Now it's just interesting to have the potential for the MAC, that first conference to make the call to kind of backtrack and make the decision to go ahead and play football. And of course, we'll stay on top of that and provide all the coverage that we can on that for you guys. And going forward, we'll just kind of think about what a potential, what the fall season would bring, or kind of keep thinking about the spring season in terms of Central Michigan and what the Chippewas are going to be able to do. With either way, either whether they play in the fall or they play in the spring, we'll make sure that we stay on top of the Chippewa news for you guys. that said, I think we're ready to jump into the top 5 list of coaches in CMU history. Like I said, rounding out the Hall of Fame series, if you will. So I've got my 5. I've actually got quite an extensive list in the honorable mention category, and then there's also a fan vote, a little bit of a fan vote, and then obviously Christian has his list. So that said, Christian, who's your number 5?
This one might be kind of a surprise, but it's this name here narrowly edged out a couple of other people because of what she's done for not just the team that she coached, but also the program as a whole. My number 5 is Christy Freese. She's a field hockey coach for a long time here. And now, actually, just this past year, they named the field after her. But after retiring as the head coach, Christy moved into the athletic department and served a handful of roles. And, she was an ambassador for the program. She was a Title IX ambassador. Really did a lot of work for Central Michigan and for women in sports in general. And so I think that, her contributions to the university land her this number 5 spot on the list. I think that she's done a lot for this university.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Actually, Freeze was on my list at first, but kind of shifted some things around. So that's a really good pick. I agree with that for sure. Like that pick a lot. Jump over my number 5, Dick Parfit, legendary men's basketball coach, 1975 MAC Coach of the Year, won actually 3 MAC championships as a coach, and had actually some success as a player in the 50s as well. 1990 member of the CMU Hall of Fame. Went 192 and 179 in 14 seasons, leading the Chippewas. Beat Georgetown in the 1975 NCAA tournament and subsequently lost to Kentucky in that second round game. But beat Oregon State in a third-place regional game, which is a little bit not a little bit different than how we know the NCAA tournament now. But when you would lose, you would be able to, I guess, secure a third-place finish within the region. So they beat Oregon State in that 75 NCAA tournament. And as a whole, under Parfit, the Chippewas made 2 NCAA tournaments and an NIT in 1979 with a first-round loss to Purdue. So and the practice gym as well is named after Parfit, and his I guess legacy is kind of like Christy Freeze, but it's kind of scattered all throughout campus, especially within the athletic department. So that's why I picked Parfit at number 5. That's my number 5. Who do you have, Christian, at number 4?
Well, at number 4, I have Sugawara. Sugawara, legendary women's basketball coach. Another one that's done a ton for the program. She's kind of stuck around after retiring last year. She's still around that women's basketball program, still highly thought of within the athletic department. And it's pretty crazy to see, a coach that led her team to the Sweet 16, in that MAC school, one of the best teams in Mid-American Conference women's basketball history. The tear they went on, and then you win a couple of games in the NCAA tournament that really weren't all that close. And then obviously you run into the saw that is Oregon's women's basketball in that Sweet 16 game and still play them competitively. I think that was kind of her crowning moment, was that NCAA tournament run. But another coach has just done so much for her program, so much for this university. And I think it's a testament to the depth within this athletic department's coaching staff that a coach like this is 4th.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a little bit surprising. I'm really anxious to see who you've got at 3 through 1. I'll be honest, I'm a little bit surprised. That is a little bit. Well, I mean, like you said, though, lots of great coaches have come through CMU. So Sue Guevara, obviously one of them. But number 4, that's surprising to say the least. I think I know who your number 1 is, but we'll get to that when we get there. And all right, my number 4 is Margot Yonker, the legendary softball coach. 39 seasons, just a little bit north of 1,200 wins, best record in MAC history, 9th all time in the NCAA. She led CMU to 13 tournament, also 10 MAC regular season and tournament titles, and an appearance in the Women's College World Series, 10-time MAC Coach of the Year, another record, just all kinds of records to her name. Served an assistant coach in the 2002 Sydney Games for Team USA, and was a gold medal winning assistant coach in the 98 World Championships. And she also was just inducted, to both the Mid-American Conference and CMU Hall of Fame here as part of the class of 2020. She just retired in 2019. Just a couple of months actually before Sue Guevara did, so that just kind of interesting to see how those legendary coaches that are so, I guess, in the forefront of our memory that that retired so close to one another. It's a lot of CMU legacy in both of those women, and they were retired within I think 2 months of each other, so that's just wild how that went down. All right, moving on. Who's your number 3?
My number 3 is Dean Kreiner, baseball coach at Central Michigan D, leading the all-time leader in wins with 516. I know that Steve Jackson, who just left a season ago, is second with 507. But Dean Kreiner, a lot of good things for the university. He was here a long time. And now, the naming that they did for the field is kind of a little bit confusing because it's still Tennyson Stadium, but there's now, I think it's either Krelitz or Kreiner Field. And it's pretty impressive to see that Dean Kreiner and all those numbers that he has. Anytime you could put together a program and have over 500 wins, that's pretty impressive in my book. And so, 516 wins and kind of the foil to Margot Yonker there for a little bit. I know that Margot's tenure is a little bit longer than his was, but to have the baseball and softball program have such good coaches there for such a long time is another thing that I consider to be pretty impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. And a little interesting that they would name it after Dave Keilitz. So Keilitz Field at Tennyson Stadium, and not necessarily after the all-time leader in coaching wins, but he's like Kreiner, kind of was that guy you'd say that helped kind of like you said, the foil to Margot Yonker kind of helped upstart the CMU baseball program. I would think so. What say you?
No, I think you're 110% right. Keilitz had an impressive tenure of his own, and then Kreiner comes in after him and kind of does a little bit better. So it was just kind of like a chain link fence where pass it on to the next guy, then pass it on to the next guy, and then on to the next guy. And now they're with Jordan Bischel, who, gosh, after 1 year, that's looking like as good a hire as any. So it's really interesting to follow the path of the CMU baseball program. And yeah, it's kind of exciting to see where it's going to go.
Yeah, absolutely. And, his second year, obviously shut down by COVID-19, was starting off pretty strong too. I mean, that team was able to put up a lot of runs and win some pretty big games. So obviously what could have been with that team, but okay, I like it. Dean Kreiner, number 3 for Christian. My number 3 is actually an active coach, still with the program after 29 seasons, going into his 30th. Wrestling's Tom Borelli. He is a 13-time MAC Coach of the Year, including 2020. The MAC championships had actually just wrapped up right before the pandemic hit. So they weren't able to go through with the NCAA championships, but they were able to finish up the MAC championships right under the wire, I guess you could say. But 337, 155, and 7 dual record, 682 winning percentage, and it's both are the most all time. And it's really not even close. Chick Sherwood had a really strong record, really strong coaching tenure with CMU before Borelli took over. But Borelli, I mean, he's the guy. He's kind of he's the staple of the CMU wrestling program. 48 All-Americans, 97 MAC champions, a lot of repeats in both of those figures, but when you count them out, there's 97 MAC champions and 48 All-Americans, including 3 in 2020 with Drew Hildebrandt, Matt Stuntzel, and Dresden Simon. Just a lot of sustained success, I guess you could put it that way. But sometimes maybe the team is a little bit down, but he's still, Borelli's been able to get guys to wrestle the best that they can and compete as hard as they can. Because, I mean, at the beginning of the 2019-20 season, they were struggling in dual meets and invitationals. And then towards the end of the year, they started to turn around. And obviously they were able to win a bunch of MAC titles and have 3 All-Americans. So that's and Matt Stuntzel, of course, was MAC Wrestler of the Year as well. So just kind of that continued success that lands Tom Borelli at number 3 on my list. All right, we're closing in on. I'm excited to hear Christian's top 2. So let's get to it. Number 2, who you got?
You've talked about her already, but Margot Yonker is my number 2, and I think that what sets her apart, you've obviously ran down her laundry list of accomplishments and achievements and accolades. I call them the AAA, but she's just done so many good things, really. I mean, and to be here for 39 years, and now they've got the field named after her. She's just, I mean, it's really cool to see when you go and you see that she's coaching internationally and helping with Team USA and then coming back to Mount Pleasant and coaching. It's just one of those things where, like, man, it's crazy to think that she's coming out of Mount Pleasant, Michigan and doing all that stuff. So, obviously, turn the Central Michigan softball program into a power of its own and then contributed on the international level. And for me, that sets her apart from so many of her coaching counterparts, and that's why I've got her so high on my list.
No, that's fair. That's fair. Yeah, no, I would totally agree with that. I mean, obviously, I had her at 4, but I would agree. Yeah, she belongs at number 2. So that she definitely belongs in the top 5. I can tell you that for free. So no, I agree. I like that. I like that pick. That makes a lot of sense for sure. My number 2 is actually somebody you already talked about, and we kind of talked about her extensively, is Sue Guevara. I don't know how much. I don't remember exactly how much we touched on. 3-time MAC Coach of the Year, winningest coach in program history with 231 wins. Won 2 MAC titles. In 2013, and then again in 2018 with that magical run of the Sweet 16. Beat LSU and Columbus, or beat Ohio State in Columbus to go to the Sweet 16. She also has a lot of professional players that have come through the program. Tanara Moore, Cassie Breen, Crystal Bradford, Raina Frost, Presley Hudson, to name a few. Bradford was also a first-round pick, 7th overall in the 2015 NBA draft. So just like you said, the longevity of her success, and like what we had kind of said about Borelli too, but the amount of success that she had, and I mean, she was here for I think 12 seasons. That first season was a little rough, but afterwards, I mean, she helped put CMU women's basketball on the map and make it, I would argue, the most popular sport on campus. So I mean, if you look at the student attendance just the attendance as a whole between the women's program and the men's program. I mean, the women's program has a lot more attendance on average each game. Maybe that's a timing thing. Maybe it's just, attachment to the program. I'm not 100% sure. But just from the looks of it, you can tell that the women's program is – a lot more people are excited about that team. And I think a lot of that has to do with Sue and the success that her coaching staff and the players were able to put together in her 12 years as at the helm of the Chippewa program. So, do you have, before we go into number one, do you have any honorable mentions that you would like to touch on?
I think that, a couple of people that obviously you mentioned that I didn't, Tom Borelli being a big one, holy cow, everything he's done for wrestling, 13-time coach of the year is pretty incredible. That's pretty outstanding. And then, other than that, you take a look down the line, you've got a couple of guys on the football side of things that have done a lot. The one I like to point out in particular, Butch Jones, I think he's not going to crack this list because he was only here a handful of years, but gee whiz, I mean, a couple of MAC titles, not just that, but they were able to dominate the MAC pretty well in his 3-year tenure as this program's head coach. They lost 3 games in the MAC. You win a couple of MAC titles, you go win a bowl game. I mean, that tenure of dominance, obviously in football, coaches love to use the MAC as kind of a springboard into the Power 5 or into the, like the Big Ten or the SEC. So he was never going to be here for a long time, but, wow, he really beat up on the MAC. And, you take a look at what's here now. Obviously, these guys are an honorable mention, but it's kind of fun to hypothesize where we might be if we're having this conversation 5 years down the line or 10 years down the line. I think that the one I think is in the best shape right now is women's basketball's Heather Osterly. I think that after 1 year, she's been able to carry on what Sue did and almost take it to the next level. I think that the next step for that program is to kind of dominate a non-conference slate. Get these big-name Power 5 schools in your gymnasium or go into these big gyms and beat them, and then that's the next step toward making this not just a mid-major power, but also a national power. And so I think if they're able to do that, then, in 10 years or 15 years down the line, Heather Osterly is going to be right in this conversation as well. Yeah,
I agree. I mean, and the success that she had as an assistant/associate head coach under Sue for 9 seasons was building up to her success as a head coach, and that was kind of the whole plan. When Sue had hired her, I guess that would make it now 10 years ago. I think. Don't hurt me, please. I promise. But that was kind of the whole plan. I think was to help build up a lot of success for Heather and all the aspects of coaching. So then when it became her time to take the program over, it was a seamless transition, and you could see that last season. Just how and a lot of those non-conference games they were pretty close in. The Green Bay game, the Louisville game actually wasn't as big of a blowout as I think a lot of people. You take a look at the score, but it was actually a pretty close game for the most part. The Western Kentucky game we won't talk about. The Dayton game that they won in overtime, that was huge. And then just the rest of that non-conference slate, they were all really competitive games, helped them prime up for the MAC season, and they only lost, I think, 2 games. Was it 2 or 3 games at the end of the MAC season? Because they were undefeated until they lost those last couple of games.
Yeah, it was 2 conference season games. Then the third loss was in the MAC tournament last year, the day before everything got shut down. So
right.
Overall, very, very successful. You opened with 15 straight wins in the conference. That's pretty incredible.
Yeah, I go 16-2 in your first conference season as a head coach. That's pretty impressive for sure. Real quick, I'll run through my honorable mention list. Christy Freeze, Christian already mentioned. We're going to go Bill Kelly in football. Roy Kramer, also in football. A little bit, maybe a controversial one here. We're going to go Jerry Reichard in gymnastics. And again, a lot of sustained excellence throughout the years. I think 36 years at the helm, but a lot of success there. And Marcy Weston, I mean, she not only she's kind of like Freeze. She coached 3 different teams and has been in such a huge part of the athletic department. I mean, the Hall of Fame is named after her, after all. So Marcy Weston cracks the honorable mention, and that's in no particular order. That's just names that kind of came to my mind as honorable mention, so no particular order there. And real quick, before we get to our number ones, we're going to hit on the fan vote. There was an overwhelming favorite on our Twitter feed, but I couldn't quite figure out a way to order it. We're gonna from 2 through 5. So number 1 is meant to be number 1, and then 2 through 5, based on the fan vote. Again, that's in no particular order. I kind of tried my best to count a little bit, but there was it was a little bit of a struggle to count exactly how to order everyone up outside of number 1. So number 5, Margot Yonker. Number 4, Marcy Weston. Number 3, Tom Borelli. Number 2, Herb Duramity. And number 1, Sue Guevara, based on the fan vote on our Twitter feed at CM Life Sports. So the fans and coaches, I saw Heather Osterly was one of our voters, agrees Sue Guevara is the number 1 coach in CMU history. Probably way too many to name, as I saw some say, but there's the fan vote top 5. Christian, I'm going to let you go first. I think I know who your number 1 is, and we probably have the same person, but go right ahead. It's all yours.
Yeah, we probably do have the same person, unless yours is Jim McElwain, but mine is Herb Duramity. Herb, you see his picture every time, the 1974 NCAA championship team comes up. Still a very prevalent face in college football today. But, the contributions he made to this program can't be, you can't overstate something like that. There's just a lot of depth to it. You're facilitating, helping this team come from not, you win a Division II championship, but then you take the next step and you take them to Division I. And Herb played a huge role in that. And then, we spent a little time in the athletic department as well. I think that there's just so many things. Another guy with a laundry list of accolades to really go through. But I'll save some material like that for you, because I'm pretty sure you and I have the same guy. I know you didn't mention him in your honorable mentions, and there's no way that you missed him. So, Herb Duramity's number 1. That's a pretty easy one. And, again, another guy, just a lot of contributions to the athletic department. And the national championship kind of sticks out as what sets him apart from the rest of this highly competitive field, the emphasis on competition. Because all these coaches, you talk to them and you realize, okay, these, they can be good interviews and kind people, but on that field, man, they are competitors, and that's what sets them apart, and that's what makes them great.
Yeah, you're 100% right. And that drive to compete, but also kind of having that, I don't want to say, soft spot, but kind of being good with people. That, that's what all of these coaches do well. But yes, I have Herb Duramity as my number 1. I'll go through some of the stats. I looked all this stuff up. So 16 seasons, 175 games, 110, 55, and 10 record. Winningest coach in program history. Inductee into the College Football Hall of Fame with the 2008 class. 90 Mid-American Conference victories. That was actually just surpassed this past year by Frank Solich at Ohio. And, we're talking, Duramity retired in, I think, 91, 92, I think. Maybe, no, it was a little bit later than that, actually, I think. I can't remember off the top of my head, but, he was part of the staff for that 74 Division II title, succeeded Roy Kramer as the head coach, won MAC titles in 79, 80, and 90, only coach to win a MAC title in 3 different decades, actually, as it stands. 2-time MAC Coach of the Year in 1980 and 1990. Was the head man for the 2 victories in 1991 and 92 at Michigan State. You guys can't see it, but I actually have a copy of, I guess, a archived poster of the front page of CM Life after CMU had defeated MSU in 1992. Christian said, done a lot for college football. He served on the Rules Committee, was its chair in 2003, was a member of the 2016 College Football Playoff Selection Committee, and again, like Christian said, spent some time in the athletic department, 13 years as the CMU AD. So, Herb Duramity, arguably the best coach in CMU history. I don't think many people would disagree with that. Obviously the fan vote might tell us otherwise, but I think if you ask some of the folks, maybe not on Twitter, who the best coach in CMU history is, I think they would tell you it's Herb Duramity. Not saying that the Twitter folks are wrong. So I definitely, like I said, Sue Guevara was my number 2 on my list. But other than that, I think that rounds out our Maroon and Bold Hall of Fame series. So, 2 weeks ago we had the best moments, best plays in CMU history. Then last week we had all the best players. So make sure to go check those out as well. And then obviously this week rounding out with the coaches. Christian, you got anything else to add before we wrap this thing up?
Not really, man. Just wanted to point out that I think that part of, obviously Sue is a wonderful coach and a wonderful person, but I think what puts her ahead with the fan vote is just how involved she was in the community. And, the coffee chalk talks that now Heather is doing, but before her it was Sue. And it was incredible to go to one of those last year and Sue being there and calling everybody by their name and talking to everybody there like, she was talking to a friend, which it's clear that that's the relationship that she has with so many people in this community. And that is something that I think is just the value of that can't be overstated. And for that reason, I think that fan vote pick of Sue being number 1 is 110% justified. Really, I do. I think that is 110% justified. Obviously, I think my criteria was a little bit different, but when I see that, it's kind of easy to tell. Those people that are voting for her all probably have had multiple conversations with Sue just because she's so open and so kind and just so friendly. And I think that's part of the reason what set her apart in the fan vote. But other than that, man, I ain't got anything. This has been a fun thing to do and kind of cool to recap the history of this athletic department. Yeah,
I'm right there with you. In the little bit that I got to meet Sue a couple of times and cover the team in 2019. She was always really nice to me, and same thing. She always called everybody by their first name, which was really, really cool. And she was not afraid to call you on your bullshit if you did something wrong too. If you go back and watch the video on our CM Life Facebook page of her retirement press conference, she called me out. She was like, "Hey, we had 7 wins my first year, not 6, but we had the best 7-win team that I've ever had." And there was a lot of people there that heard that. So I definitely appreciate that one because it makes me think, okay, I got to make sure, double check everything, triple check everything, make sure I get it right. So good learning lesson there. So thanks a million for that, Sue. I actually, I really do appreciate that. I'm not just like, oh, I appreciate it. No, I really do appreciate that. But yeah, I think, like Christian said, I totally agree. Sue was very, and she's still very engaged with the CMU community. She's at a lot of the games, cheering the team on. So yeah, I 100% agree actually with all three of our lists here. So, yeah, and like Christian said, this was a lot of fun to put together the last couple of weeks. Obviously, we're still trying to find some things to talk about because hopefully hopefully there's some football to talk about here in the next week or so. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there. And we thank you guys so much for your patience following along with us. Make sure keep following along with us at @cboer_ for Christian's Twitter, Chastain AJ for mine, CM Life Sports on Twitter, at CM Life on Twitter, Central Michigan Life on Facebook, like I had mentioned before. And as always, cm-life.com for all of your Chippewa sports coverage and coverage around CMU. Other than that, guys, like I said, thank you again so much for listening, for watching, and for following along with us through this semester. We'll talk to you guys again when we meet again.